I wouldn't say we heard anything shocking. Our legislative assembly, it's pretty close to the ground. We're a small territory. We're all close to our communities, and so we know the issues. And so, what we heard from the communities today were a lot of the things that we're trying to address about drugs and about crime, about homelessness, about housing. Like, these are actually our priorities and in our mandate. So I wouldn't say I was shocked, but I'm always open to hearing from the municipalities and the people who actually deliver services directly.
Welcome to Municipal Affairs. This past week, municipal leaders from every corner of the Northwest Territories came together in Yellowknife for the 59th Annual Northwest Territories Association of Communities Convention. Now, it was an opportunity for local governments to collaborate, share ideas, and work together on strengthening their communities across the territory. The NWTAC has come a long way since its founding in 1966, when leaders from Yellowknife, Fort Smith, Hay River, and Inuvik joined forces to create a unified voice for community governments. Today, all 33 of the Northwest Territories incorporated communities and designated authorities are members, ensuring that municipal concerns are heard loud and clear at all levels of government. And like I said, over the past weekend, leaders debated important issues, exchanged best practices, and worked on solutions to challenges facing their collective communities. And on the final day, we had the chance to chat with NWTAC President and Mayor of Yellowknife Northwest Territories, Mayor Rebecca Alty, to discuss the key takeaways from this year's 59th convention. President Alty, thank you so much for doing this. We just wrapped up the 59th annual NWTAC convention here in Yellowknife. How did you think it went?
It was really good. It's always a good opportunity. We are 33 communities across the Northwest Territories. 4 of our communities never have road access, and so this is that one time a year that we get together and can share challenges, opportunities, so plenty of time to have those more informal chats, learn what others are doing. We do what we call speed dating in the mornings on the Friday and Saturday, so getting to talk to organizations, and then in the afternoon doing more of our business. And so, yeah, I think it was from the feedback of delegates, folks enjoyed themselves and learned a lot.
Was there anything that took you by surprise when listening to some of the comments and the questions and even the informal discussions around the resolutions? Was there anything that took you by surprise of what the municipalities are going through right now in the Northwest Territories?
Unfortunately not, because it is still, the challenges of housing and the challenges of mental health and addiction support. And so although there has been investments, one of the biggest challenges is climate change, and then so they've purchased houses, but they have to be shipped up on a barge, and there was low water level, and there was forest fires. So houses that were purchased 2-3 years ago we're just making it to the community now, and then they get set up on the infrastructure and stuff. So that's the challenge, and I know when the federal government launched the rapid housing, and they were like, you must be done within 12 months, and I was like, that's just not possible. And we want everything built yesterday, but we have to actually look at the realistic timelines. So the federal government made changes and folks were able to take advantage of some of that funding, but housing continues to be one of those big challenges in infrastructure.
One of the big key takeaways for me, and it's not often that I hear municipal leaders talking about it so passionately, is mental health and addiction. It seems to be a topic of much discussion. The senator made some mention of it in her speech. The MP made some mentions. From a municipal standpoint, from an NWTAC's perspective, what can municipalities do to help address this mental health and addictions that seems to be grappling the majority of your member communities?
It is the biggest challenge, because as municipalities, we are similar to municipalities down south. So it is the roads, the water, the sewer. Municipalities are supposed to provide services to properties, territorial and province, providing services to people, so that mental health and addictions. But that's where coming together during this weekend and continuing to have that united voice when we're talking to the federal government, when we're talking to the territorial government, and unfortunately, sharing those personal stories of without these investments, this is what's happening. And so we all have such lived experience that's impossible to ignore, and I know it has an incredible weight on elected officials' shoulders, knowing, and even in the territorial ministers during their Q&A, it's their relatives too. They're also struggling, so it's definitely a deeply personal issue, and it can be challenging and frustrating and demoralizing for NWT elected officials.
I hate to ask the stupid question, but is there a quick fix to this, or does it need to be a trilateral governmental approach, or even four-lateral? I don't even know what that is. Four-lateral, because NGOs need to come to the table, residents need to come to the table, families need to come to the table. How do we address this, and do the municipalities need to be the first to stand up and say, we need to address this?
Actually, it was the Premier's comment in one of the Q&As of in the South, the government was making all these investments in nation-building in projects, and at the same time, the investment they made in the North was genocide. And so it is it's really important that federal funding to the territories and TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission call to actions. It's going to be the 10th anniversary in June. TRC number 21 is about long-term sustainable funding for healing centers, and so continuing to call on the federal government to implement that one. And then it's everybody involved. It's the federal government, Indigenous governments, the territory, the municipalities, the NGOs, residents, all coming forward, because I do think there's the dollars to build stuff, there's the ongoing program funding, and there's the training involved, we could have all this money come to us tomorrow, and we're not going to have enough social workers or counselors to actually be able to put on all these programs. But when the federal government did announce the funding for Inuvik, one of the things was it was taking a look at that three-part, the capital, but also the training for Inuit, so that they could be delivering the services in their home territory.
I've been to numerous of these conventions, and this is the first time I've seen the senator, the cabinet, the speaker, the premier, the commissioner, the MP, mayors, all mingling like they're best friends. There seems to be something different that's going on in the Northwest Territories. What do you chalk that up to? Because it seems like everyone wants to find the solutions and work together.
I would say it's, at the territorial and the municipal level, it is consensus. There's no party politics, so I think that does help. And it is because we're small, and so you can try to make enemies, but that's not going to help, and that. And so it is about coming together, and we do try to really stress it. There was some funding changes at the territorial level to municipal governments, which saw some communities had been receiving, say, 200% of their funding, so scaling back to 100, which does mean it's a cut to funding, to then increase other municipalities who are being underfunded. And so trying to get everybody, it's let's not attack each other and be you shouldn't fund that person, you should fund me instead. It's no guys, let's call on the territorial and the federal government to increase everybody's funding so that everybody's at least at 100%, and then
do you think you've gotten there?
I think you always
there's going to be discrepancy.
There's always going to be, at the end of the day, my community's got to come first. But if we can find those projects, at least that we can align on, and that's where the mental health and addictions, we can align on that and really encourage more funding in that.
So we just ramped up 59. We're heading into 60. What does the next year look like for municipalities? What's the plan going forward? Because you had your resolutions, you have a lot that you have to get through, but what do you, as president, want to do for the organization in I'm not sure if it's your last year, because I'm not sure if you can stand for re-election, but okay, if so, your potential last year if you decide to run off to the sunset and become just full-time mayor again.
Yeah, well, we do have the federal election, but a lot of our resolutions, and we are a territorial association, so it is about lobbying at the territorial level a lot. But I think the important one is to try to get that working group set up with the territorial government on emergency management and emergency planning, because as municipalities, we're the front line, in 2023, 2024, 2022 was a big flooding year. And so we want to be able to bring all of those lessons learned and actually start making changes. There's a number of legislation that the territorial government's looking to change. And so, again, really want to work with them. One of the things is the Property Assessment and Taxation Act, which doesn't sound very probably interesting to the average resident. However, it's...
You got your commitment, though.
We did, yeah. And I was like, so the finance minister is definitely aware. And because, again, we're on the ground, we live this legislation day in, day out. And so, if you're just typing away up in the territorial office, you might not realize the challenges of... one of our issues is if you don't pay your taxes, we can auction off your property, but it's set at an assessed value versus market value. And so for residential, assessed value is higher, so we'll always manage to recover taxes. On the commercial side, it's the reverse. And so it's hard to recover unpaid taxes on commercial properties. So there's lots of, that's a big piece. A little one is we must physically mail you your letter. So everybody else wants to use email. We should, and it costs $35,000 to mail everybody their tax notices. So we can spend our money on something else.
Final question. Looking back, is there something that you wish you would have dove into a little bit deeper this session, or do you think the delegates are going away knowing what NWTAC is working and advocating for, and they can go back to their community saying, we have a partner with the organization?
It is always challenging because it's that big table where we're all just doing that kind of official boring stuff.
To me, it's not boring. I came here from Calgary.
And I also agree. I was like, we have had some really interesting wordsmithing of resolutions. And the interactive tables do get, I think that's where folks get a lot of the value. But so can we do something more on the interactive tables? Can we break the big horseshoe down into smaller groups and then come back together? Some good food for thought for the 60th anniversary.
Mayor Alty, President Alty, thank you so much.
One of the highlights of the convention was the Premier R.J. Simpson in attendance on the final day. And of course, no NWTAC convention would be complete without the infamous Bear Pit session, where leaders had the chance to directly question government officials. Following that lively discussion, we chatted with Premier Simpson to talk about the pressing issues facing the NWT and what steps his government is taking to support communities ahead of potential tariffs from Donald Trump, President of the United States.
Premier, thank you so much for doing this. We just wrapped up the 59th annual NWTAC convention. You just participated in the Bear Pit. Was there anything that was shocking? Did you hear anything new, or was it the same issues that the municipalities have been raising with you since you've taken office?
I wouldn't say we heard anything shocking. Our legislative assembly, it's pretty close to the ground. We're a small territory. We're all close to our communities, and so we know the issues. And so, what we heard from the communities today were a lot of the things that we're trying to address about drugs and about crime, about homelessness, about housing. These are actually our priorities and in our mandate. So I wouldn't say I was shocked, but I'm always open to hearing from the municipalities and the people who actually deliver services directly.
What do you do with the information that you've taken back from today and go away with? Is there things that you're going to be looking at to implement, or is there things that you're going to be looking at to work with municipalities a little bit closer on?
Yeah, well, they'll express their desire to work more closely with government in a few certain areas. And so we got to examine how can we work more closely with them in those areas. And of course, we have a Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs who, you can call him, any municipal leader can call him any time of the day and, give them their opinion. And we always take that feedback. So whenever I'm at these types of forums, I take this in, and it might not be something we even, something we can action right away, but there could be a decision down the road that would be informed by, what I heard here today. So we're always open to listen, and I always keep that information and use it.
I want to turn to a global event that's going to be taking place on Tuesday this week, and that's March 4th. President Donald Trump has announced that he is going to be implementing that is the date he's going to implement the tariffs on Canadian goods. As Northwest Territories is a mineral community, resources is quite close to your heart, I'm assuming. What would this tariff mean to the communities of the Northwest Territories and the Northwest Territory government and as a whole?
Well, we'll see what happens on March 4th. We've had threats of tariffs. We have a free trade agreement that says that these certain things should happen and they're not happening. So we don't know what's going to happen. But when that comes into force, if they come into force, there is going to be a 10% tariff on critical minerals as part of the 10% tariffs on energies. And so, we're lucky in that sense that it's not going to be the 25% tariff potentially. And so I think that the industries in the north, the critical mineral industries, are a little bit relieved, although no one's relieved about these tariffs. But we're all concerned. All of Canada is concerned. And so what we need to do is we need to come together as a country and make sure that we're doing what we need to do to support Canada and support Canadians. We're obviously so heavily reliant on the United States because we have a massive border. We have free trade between our two countries, and we have a lot of investments in the United States. But it's clear now that the world has been reshaped, even in the past month, and we need to reshape Canada. We need to shore up our own industrial base, shore up our own manufacturing base, our research and innovation base. And so that's really going to be my focus, is lobbying, the federal government and Canadian businesses and industry to really invest in Canada.
What role have you played since you've gotten back from Washington? Because there was a lot of talk about going down to Washington, speaking with U.S. leaders. You're now back. We are 3 days away. Has any progress been done from a Northwest Territories perspective to shore up that border? Because I know you're not a border territory, but you were in Washington, and I'm assuming you're part of these discussions. What work has been done?
Well, the federal government can speak to the work that's been done on the border, but I know there's been a lot of work on the border. Obviously, there's over $1 billion being invested. So from my perspective, I wanted to go down to Washington to be part of Team Canada. It was important to have all of the territorial and provincial premiers there together. And so we went down there, we tried to get into the people's ears who would be talking to the president and who would hopefully be influencing the president. And there were a number of side meetings as well. So all of the premiers went out and they met other individuals, other people, Congress people, senators, being part of the territories. The 3 northern premiers went out and we met counterparts from Alaska, from Greenland. And so we're trying to build those diplomatic relationships as well across the Arctic, which are so important in this environment today.
Doug Ford just got reelected to a third consecutive majority government in Ontario. He's the leader. He's the chair of the Federation. What does it mean for Northwest Territories to have Doug Ford back and a close ally?
Yeah, and that's accurate. Doug Ford's always been a close ally of the territory. He always sticks up for the little guy, as he says. And I sent him a congratulations text, and it's obvious that he has a strong mandate now to go ahead over these next 4 years. And he's been a strong chair for the Council of the Federation. Very vocal, and I think that's what we need. We don't want to roll over. We don't want to look like we're rolling over. And so I'm happy that he'll be back there.
I want to turn to a subject that I've been hearing about a lot over the last 3 days here, and that is what's going on in the Sawtooth region of your territory. Food insecurity, challenges along the Mackenzie River. There was a motion just put into the legislature around a state of emergency. What does your government have to say to the people of the Sawtooth region when you're looking into what the next steps are for the territorial government around the state of emergency?
Well, one of our biggest pushes this government has been for the Mackenzie Valley Highway. We came into government and we knew there was a drought. We saw it played out in the forest fires last year. And so we put a lot of emphasis on getting this highway started because we have Mackenzie River, which is our highway, essentially. We can't get barges up. We can't get resupply up. We understand what an issue that is. We've been doing this for decades. And so to not be able to do it, it's a serious issue. So we've really doubled down on our efforts. And we are also doubling down on the efforts on the winter road. So in the winter, there's a road up to the Sawtooth region. We've put more enforcement on there. We've worked with the trucking companies to ensure the road is in better condition. And so a lot of effort is going there to help businesses and residents get what they need during the winter road season in case we're in a similar situation next year. So, and we spend millions of dollars supporting residents there as well and businesses. So it's definitely been a focus for our government and will continue to be.
One last question, and it was talked about a little bit at the Bear Pit session, and that is around municipal funding. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities has been calling on a trilateral meeting between premiers, municipalities, and the federal government. Premier Miller last year said he would be willing to. Premier Canua said he's been willing to sit down. Would you be willing to have that discussion with the three levels of government around a new fiscal framework for municipalities?
Well, I don't want to step on the toes of our Minister of Municipal Affairs, but it's clear that the territory we do have. We get most of our funds from the federal government, the vast majority of it, even especially relative to provinces, because we don't have that ability to raise that revenue. So our municipalities are in a different position than the municipalities in the provinces, in the southern provinces. And so I think that what I always tell the federal government is you need to focus, you need to think about the North. When you're designing a program or a policy, just realize the North is different. What works for the southern provinces, it doesn't always work for the North. So while there may be national conversations going on, we really need that discussion with the federal government directly.
So you're not in favor of it? Is that what I'm hearing? I just want to confirm with that.
I'll defer to the Minister of Municipal Affairs on this one. I'm not too familiar with that file at this moment.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Premier.
Thank you.
Also in attendance was Michael McLeod, the Liberal MP for the Northwest Territories, who addressed delegates in what will likely be his final appearance at the NWTAC convention as a politician. After announcing his retirement in 2024, McLeod reflected on his time in office, the progress made for the Northwest Territory communities, and the challenges that still lay ahead. We spoke with MP McLeod about his legacy and the advice he has for the municipal leaders advocating for municipal issues both territorially and federally.
MP McLeod, thank you so much for doing this. This is your last official NWTAC convention as the sitting member of Parliament for the Northwest Territories. How are you feeling about seeing the mayors and councillors one last time?
Well, it's kind of bittersweet. I'm happy that I'm working towards retirement. I'm happy that I'm moving on to other things, but at the same time, I've developed many friendships. I've gotten to know a lot of people from the different communities and have become close friends. And there's some people that I've talked to on a regular basis for the time while I was in politics, and I'm going to miss some of those discussions and early morning calls and messages that I receive on a regular basis.
You started out yourself as a mayor through your political career as the mayor of Fort Providence. You're now ending as an MP. What's the advice that you would give to mayors today to help them better advocate for their communities? Because you've been at all three levels of government, mayor, MLA, MP. What's the advice you give them to advocate for their community?
Well, whenever I have the opportunity to talk to people about getting involved in politics, my advice is always to stay focused on what matters to the people that you're going to represent. When I got involved in politics way back, I was involved actually, just out of my teens, and sports and recreation facilities was the big issues, and land claims and those type of things were the talk at the meetings. Now we have different discussions at the municipal meetings. We're talking about fires, we're talking about floods, we're talking about emergencies, we're talking about pandemics, and there's a different discussion going on. And of course, there's still issues that have lingered from the time I got involved so many years ago. Issues like land claims, land tenure with Indigenous governments, reconciliation. So some things continue to
things never change.
Some things continue to find themselves at the center of discussion, and even though things may evolve, sometimes they don't stop when we think that okay, there's no more to say on it.
One of the big things that I'm hearing from leaders, and you mentioned it in your speech this afternoon, was housing. Housing seems to be a major issue for Northwest Territory communities. What has this government done? What has the government that you've been part of for the last 9.5 years done to help with getting housing built in the Northwest Territories?
Well, for me, the solution to dealing with the housing crisis we're facing in the Northwest Territories is more than just investment of money. What we've done here in the Northwest Territories is allow the Indigenous governments to step up to the table. So we're not only depending on the NWT Housing Corporation to solve the issues like we were historically. We now have many players at the table. Municipalities are involved and Indigenous governments are involved, and they're able to set the agenda with resources so that they can invest in what their membership needs. And they are at the forefront, so they really know what they want to see done.
Now, I want to turn to the last topic, and it's about the federal leadership race, if you don't mind. You've endorsed Mark Carney as the next Prime Minister of Canada. He will be the first Northwest Territory man to hold the highest office in this land. Do you think Northwest Territories issues will be front and center with Mark Carney as the Prime Minister of Canada?
Northern issues are always challenging to bring to the center of discussion. But I think having someone that is familiar with the issues is going to help us, is going to go a long ways. We had the Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister Trudeau, who was familiar with the Northwest Territories. It was easy to talk to him, and he was always eager to get involved and support the North. And I think Mark Carney is going to take the same approach. I think Mark knows the northern issues. I've had a chance to talk to him over the last couple of weeks. He sounds very familiar with the issues, or he's been well briefed, but he could really talk on a lot of the detail that I was surprised to hear. Indigenous issues are something he seems to be very familiar with also, and those are things for me personally that are very important. The North is over half Indigenous, so we need to make sure somebody is sensitive to what's going on, and of course the North is big and spread out, so we need somebody that can hit the ground running and is familiar with what's going on how things work up here, and be able to help us move forward.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you for talking to me.
Thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of Municipal Affairs. We wanted to extend a heartfelt thank you to the Northwest Territories Association of Communities for allowing us to attend this year and speaking directly to municipal leaders. Now, next week, we are going to be starting our sit-down conversations with municipal leaders on the cross-border interviews. So we hope you do tune in for those. And we hope you've enjoyed today's conversations and gained some valuable insights on what's going on in the Northwest Territories. To stay in the loop with all of our latest episodes, don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platforms or follow us on social media. For even more content and learn more about the stories and people we feature on this show, visit us online at crossborderinterviews.ca. Now, your support means the world to us, so share this episode with your friends, your family, and help keep the conversation going. So until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll see you next time here on Municipal Affairs.